Little girl tells judge I am my grandmother's lawyer. What happened next shocked the entire town. The Riverside County Courthouse was busier than usual that Tuesday morning. Mrs. Margaret Wilson, 75, trembled as she waited for her hearing, unaware her life was about to change forever through the courage of someone very special. That's when an 11-year-old girl stood up from the front row, adjusted the oversized borrowed blazer draping her small frame, and declared firmly to Judge Richard Thompson, "Your Honor, I am my grandmother's lawyer." A heavy silence fell over the room. Whispers started quietly, but soon turned into outraged murmurs. Attorney Michael Peterson, representing Mrs. Wilson's son, let out a mocking laugh that echoed off the courthouse walls. "This is a joke, Your Honor," Michael said, still chuckling. "A child can't represent anyone in court." But Judge Richard, a 58-year-old man with graying hair and piercing eyes, raised his hand for silence. There was something about the girl's determination that deeply intrigued him. "What's your name, child?" he asked, leaning slightly forward. "Emma Johnson Williams, Your Honor. I'm 11 and Mrs. Margaret Wilson's granddaughter." The girl opened a worn folder full of papers organized with colorful clips. "I know I can't be a real lawyer, but I asked permission to speak for my grandmother for 5 minutes." The judge studied the scene carefully. Before him stood a small girl with curly hair in a ponytail, wearing an ill-fitting suit, yet carrying a confidence many seasoned lawyers lacked. "Proceed," said the judge, ignoring Attorney Peterson's protests. Emma took a deep breath and began speaking, her clear, determined voice filling the silent room. "My grandmother is being accused by her own son of lacking mental capacity. He wants to take over her guardianship to get the house she's lived in for 50 years. The girl held up a sheet of paper. "But I have proof she's perfectly fine." Michael Peterson stood up angrily. "Your Honor, this is absurd. Are we to listen to a child over medical reports and legal documents?" "Mr. Peterson," the judge said firmly, "I'll allow the girl to continue. Go on, Emma." The girl gave the judge a timid smile and turned back to her papers. "My grandmother never misses bill payments. Here are all her receipts from the last 6 months, organized by date." Emma displayed a folder full of payment records. "She also doesn't mix up medications. This is her medical schedule where I help her note all dosages." Mrs. Wilson's son's lawyer, Robert Wilson, shook his head dismissively. "A child could have made these, Your Honor. They hold no legal weight." But Emma wasn't intimidated. She'd prepared for this objection. "Then I'll show something a child couldn't fake." She pulled a small recorder from her folder. "I recorded Uncle Robert planning how he'd get my grandmother committed." The room fell completely silent. Even the judge seemed surprised. Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now back to our story. "This is unacceptable," shouted Michael Peterson. "Minor-made recordings aren't admissible, especially without consent." Judge Richard raised his hand again for silence, his eyes carefully studying the girl before him. "Emma, where did you learn about laws and legal procedures?" The girl lowered her eyes for a moment, as if she'd been caught doing something wrong. "At the public library, Your Honor. When I found out Uncle Robert wanted to take my grandmother from her home, I started researching guardianship and seniors' rights. The librarian, Mrs. Meredith, helped me find law books that were easier to understand." "And how long have you been studying this?" 3 months, Your Honor. Every day after school, I went to the library. On weekends, too." The judge looked visibly impressed. An 11-year-old girl had dedicated 3 months of her life to protecting her grandmother, studying laws many adults found too complex. "Why isn't your mother here today?" The judge's question made Emma swallow hard. She knew this moment would come and had rehearsed her answer many times. "My mother is working in New York, Your Honor. She's a nurse and got a temporary job at a hospital there. She doesn't know about this case because Uncle Robert only filed the petition after she left." Robert Wilson, a 45-year-old man with a prominent belly and advanced baldness, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Until then, he had remained silent, letting his lawyer speak for him. "Your Honor," said Michael Peterson, "even if the child's intentions are noble, she can't represent anyone in court. Besides, we have medical reports proving Mrs. Margaret's declining mental state." The judge nodded. "You're right, Mr. Peterson. Emma, you can't act as a lawyer, but I can allow you to present information as a concerned granddaughter. He glanced at the papers on his desk. I see here there's a medical report from Dr. William Carter diagnosing early-stage senile dementia. Emma felt her heart race. She knew about that report and had discovered something important about it. Your Honor, may I say something about this doctor? Go ahead. Dr. William Carter has been friends with my Uncle Robert for over 20 years. They play soccer together on the same team every Sunday at the country club. A murmur spread through the room. Michael Peterson tried to stand to protest, but the judge motioned for him to sit. Continue, Emma. I spoke with other patients of Dr. William. I found 3 similar cases in the last 2 years. Elderly people who received dementia diagnoses, but other doctors later said they were fine. Judge Richard was now fully focused on the girl's words. He had presided over hundreds of guardianship cases, but had never seen such a detailed investigation by a child. Emma, do you have the names of these people? The girl flipped through her papers and pulled out a handwritten list. Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Dorothy Jenkins, Mr. George Sullivan, and Mrs. Eleanor King. They all received reports from Dr. Williams saying they had dementia, but family members disputed it, and other doctors said there was nothing wrong. Robert Wilson could no longer stay silent. This is a smear campaign against a respected doctor. My niece is lying. I'm not lying, Uncle Robert, Emma shot back, turning to face him. And you know I'm not. The judge banged his gavel. Order in the court. He looked at Robert Wilson. Mr. Robert, the girl isn't your daughter. She's your niece. And she hasn't made any direct accusations, only reported facts she investigated. Mrs. Margaret, who had remained quiet throughout the discussion, tried to stand. Her hands trembled, not from nerves but from old age. Please, Your Honor, may I speak? The judge nodded kindly. Of course, Mrs. Margaret. You're the most important person in this hearing. The elderly woman rose slowly, leaning on the cane she always carried. Her white hair was neatly combed, and she wore a simple but clean and well-kept dress. Your Honor, I don't have dementia. I may forget where I put my glasses from time to time, or the name of an actor from an old soap opera, but I know perfectly well what's happening here. Her voice was clear and firm despite her age. My son wants my house because he's having financial difficulties. I know that, and I feel sorry for him, but I can't give him my house. It's the only place I have to live. Mom, you're confusing things, interrupted Robert Wilson. I don't want your house. I want to take care of you. Robert, said Mrs. Margaret Wilson, looking directly at her son, you haven't visited me in 2 months. How can you say you want to take care of me? The straightforward response silenced Robert Wilson immediately. He looked at the floor, visibly embarrassed. Judge Richard Thompson grew increasingly intrigued by the case. In his experience, people with actual dementia rarely articulated such coherent and direct answers about emotionally complex matters. Mrs. Wilson, can you tell me what day it is today? Tuesday, March 15th, 2024. We're at the Riverside County Courthouse, and you are Judge Richard Thompson. Do you remember what you had for breakfast? Coffee with milk, 2 slices of bread with margarine, and a banana. Emma made it for me before we came here. The judge took some notes. And can you take care of yourself at home? Yes, Your Honor. Emma helps me with heavier tasks like changing light bulbs or cleaning high windows. But I cook, tend to my plants, and clean the house. I even still drive when I need to go to the doctor or run errands. Michael Peterson stood up again. Your Honor, with all due respect, people with dementia can have moments of clarity. The medical report is clear about the diagnosis. Dr. Peterson is right, agreed the judge. That's why I'll order a new medical evaluation, this time with a professional chosen by the court. He looked at Emma. Young lady, your arguments are interesting, but we need an independent medical assessment to clarify the situation. Emma felt a pang of disappointment, but didn't give up. Your Honor, may I ask for one thing? Go ahead. When my grandmother is examined, could you ask the doctor to ask her about everyday things, not politics or distant events? She gets confused when talking about things outside her routine. The judge found the observation insightful. I'll note that suggestion. The next hearing is scheduled for 15 days from now, March 30th at 9 a.m. The doctor will be Dr. Thomas Green from Memorial Hospital. After the hearing ended, Emma helped her grandmother stand and together they left the courthouse. Robert Wilson followed them to the door. "Emma, you don't understand the situation. Your grandmother could get hurt living alone." The girl stopped and faced her uncle. "Uncle Robert, my grandmother doesn't live alone. I take care of her every day. And if you're really so worried, why don't you visit us?" Robert Wilson had no answer. He watched his niece and mother walk away, feeling a mix of guilt and frustration. In the following days, Emma intensified her care routine for her grandmother. She'd come home from school and go straight to Mrs. Wilson's house, just 3 blocks away. There, she helped prepare dinner, organized medications, and stayed chatting until her mother got home from work. During this time, Emma discovered something that worried her even more. While organizing her grandmother's papers, she found bank statements showing regular withdrawals Mrs. Wilson didn't remember making. "Grandma, do you remember withdrawing $500 last week?" Mrs. Wilson put on her glasses and examined the statement. "No, dear. I only took out $200 for medicine and groceries." Emma felt a chill in her stomach. She knew only 2 people had access to her grandmother's account: herself, for emergencies, and her Uncle Robert, who had kept a card when her grandfather passed away 3 years earlier. The girl decided to investigate further. She went to the bank and asked to speak with the manager, Mr. Benjamin, who had known the family for years. "Mr. Benjamin, can I ask you something about my grandmother's account?" The manager, a kind, middle-aged man, smiled at the girl. "Of course, Emma. You know I can't give detailed information because of bank rules, but I'll try to help. These withdrawals on the statement, were they made with a card or at the counter?" The manager checked the system. "They were made with a card, at the ATM in the town square." Emma thanked him and left the bank with another piece of the puzzle. Her grandmother rarely went to the town square, and whenever she needed cash, she always asked Emma to accompany her to the bank's own counter. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. That night, Emma talked to her mother Marilyn about her discovery. "Mom, I think Uncle Robert is taking money from Grandma's account." Marilyn, a 35-year-old nursing technician, stopped washing the dishes and turned to her daughter. "Emma, that's a very serious accusation. Are you sure?" "I don't have absolute proof, but I have strong suspicions." The girl showed her mother the statements. "Look at these withdrawals. Grandma doesn't remember making them, and they were all at the ATM in the town square." Marilyn examined the papers carefully. She knew her mother well and was aware that Mrs. Margaret was extremely careful with money, always jotting down every expense in a little notebook. "Let's look into this after the hearing, sweetheart. First, we need to settle the guardianship issue." But Emma couldn't get the matter out of her head. If she could prove Uncle Robert was taking money from Grandma, it would be important evidence that he didn't have good intentions. The next day after school, Emma went to the town square and watched the ATM from a distance. She knew it was a long shot, but maybe she could catch her uncle in the act. She waited for 2 hours, but Robert Wilson never showed up. Just as she was about to give up, she noticed something interesting. There was a security camera pointed directly at the ATM. The girl approached a city guard patrolling the square. "Officer, do those cameras record footage?" The guard, a young man named David, smiled at her. "They sure do, kiddo. Why do you ask?" "Someone stole money from my grandma, and I wanted to see if the cameras caught anything." David grew more serious. "That's a matter for the police station, sweetheart. You need to file a report." "We thought about that, but first I wanted to be sure. How long do they keep the footage?" 30 days. After that, it's automatically erased." Emma thanked the officer and went home deep in thought. She needed to act fast if she wanted to use the footage as evidence. That night, she talked to her mother again about the possibility of requesting the security camera footage. "Mom, if we can prove Uncle Robert was taking money from Grandma, could that help in court?" Marilyn considered the question. "It could, honey. If he was stealing from his own mother, it shows he doesn't have good intentions. But to get that footage, we really do need to file a police report." "Then let's do it." The next day, Marilyn and Emma went to the police station and reported the situation to Officer Martin Smith. The policeman, a seasoned 50-year-old, listened carefully to their story. "I'll open an investigation for possible embezzlement," the officer said. "With the police report, You can request the security camera footage from City Hall. With the document in hand, Emma and Marilyn went to City Hall. There they were assisted by the security coordinator, who explained the procedure. The footage can be released for police investigation or legal proceedings. Do you have an ongoing case? We do, replied Marilyn, showing the documents for the restraining order hearing. Then I can release the footage from the last 15 days. Which specific dates would you like? Emma checked the bank statements. From March 5th, 12th, and 18th, please. The employee prepared a storage device with the requested footage. When they got home, Emma and Marilyn carefully watched the videos. The footage from the 5th showed nothing relevant, but on the 12th, at 2:30 p.m., they clearly saw Robert Wilson approaching the ATM, inserting a card and withdrawing money. "It's him!" exclaimed Emma. "And look at the date. It's exactly when the withdrawal appears on Grandma's statement." Marilyn felt a mix of sadness and anger. Her own brother was stealing from their elderly mother. The footage from the 18th showed the same scene. Robert Wilson withdrawing money at the exact time a transaction appeared on Mrs. Margaret's statement. "Now we have proof," said Marilyn. "I'll take this to the lawyer handling Mom's case for the hearing." But Emma had another idea. "Mom, can I bring this footage to the courthouse? I think it would be more impactful if I presented it during the hearing." Marilyn hesitated. She knew her daughter was deeply involved in the case, maybe too much for an 11-year-old. "Sweetheart, you've already done so much. Let the adults handle the rest." "But Mom, I started this investigation. I want to finish it." Marilyn saw the determination in her daughter's eyes and felt pride mixed with worry. "All right, but I'll be there with you." The following days passed slowly for Emma. She continued caring for her grandmother, but now with an extra weight on her shoulders. Knowing her own uncle was stealing from Mrs. Margaret left her both sad and furious. During this time, something unexpected happened. Emma's teacher, Mrs. Clare, asked to speak with her after class. "Emma, I've noticed you've been more distracted in class. Is everything okay?" The girl hesitated but ended up sharing the whole situation. Mrs. Clare, a seasoned 45-year-old educator, listened carefully. "What an incredible story," said the teacher. "You're very brave, but you also need to remember you're a child. You shouldn't carry all this weight alone." "I know, Mrs. Clare, but I can't let anything bad happen to my grandmother." Mrs. Clare smiled warmly. "And nothing will. But know you can count on me if you need help." The conversation with her teacher comforted Emma, but didn't lessen her determination. She had decided she would do everything in her power to protect her grandmother. The day before the new hearing, Emma had an idea. She decided to visit the people mentioned in her research about Dr. William Carter. The first was Mrs. Dorothy Jenkins, a 70-year-old woman who lived in the neighboring area. "Mrs. Dorothy, my name is Emma. Could I talk to you about Dr. William?" The woman invited the girl inside and offered her a glass of water. "Oh dear, that doctor nearly ruined my life. He said I had dementia, and my son almost had me committed. What happened then? My daughter didn't believe the diagnosis and took me to another doctor. Dr. David Miller said I was perfectly fine, just a little forgetful due to my age. But that's normal, isn't it?" Emma wrote everything down in her notebook. "Did Dr. William know your son?" "Oh yes, they went to school together. My son mentioned it when he took me to the appointment." The second visit was to Mr. George Sullivan, a 68-year-old man who welcomed Emma into his auto repair shop. "Sweetheart, I'm so glad someone's looking into this doctor. He nearly destroyed my family." "How so, Mr. Sullivan?" "My son and daughter-in-law wanted to put me in a nursing home. They said I had dementia and couldn't work anymore. But I know my way around an engine better than most young folks out there." "What did you do?" "I went to another doctor, Dr. Thomas Green. He ran some tests and said everything was fine. That I just needed new glasses and some memory exercises." Emma wrote down Dr. Thomas Green's name. He was the same doctor the judge had chosen to examine her grandmother. The third visit was to Mrs. Eleanor King, who lived on a small farm outside town. "My dear," said the 73-year-old woman, "this Dr. William is a very dangerous man. He almost convinced my children I'd lost my mind." "How did you find out the report was wrong?" "It was my granddaughter, a smart girl like you. She got suspicious and took me to New York for a full checkup. The doctors there said my mind was perfectly sharp for my age. By the end of the day, Emma had 3 solid testimonies. Dr. William Carter had issued questionable reports in at least 3 cases, always favoring relatives with financial stakes in the elderly's guardianship. On the morning of the hearing, Emma woke up early. She put on her older cousin's borrowed suit again and organized all her documents with extra care. Marilyn went with her to the courthouse, along with Mrs. Margaret Wilson. Her grandmother was calmer than at the first hearing, confident in the investigations her granddaughter had done. "Grandma, are you nervous?" Emma asked. "No, dear. If I have to leave my home, at least I know we fought till the end." Her grandmother's answer moved Emma. She held the elderly woman's hand and promised, "Nothing's going to happen to you, Grandma. I swear." The courthouse was even more crowded than before. The story of the girl lawyer had spread through town, and many had come to see the case's outcome. Judge Richard Thompson opened the session promptly at 9 a.m. "We are here to review Dr. Thomas Green's report on Mrs. Margaret Wilson's mental state. Dr. Green, would you present your findings?" The doctor, a serious but kind-looking 55-year-old man, stood. "Your Honor, after a thorough examination, I can confirm Mrs. Margaret Wilson shows no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment warranting guardianship." He checked his notes. "She has some normal age-related limitations, like slower processing of complex information, but retains full capacity to care for herself and make life decisions." A murmur of approval filled the room. Robert Wilson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Michael Peterson stood immediately. "Your Honor, how do we explain the discrepancy between this report and Dr. William Carter's?" Judge Richard looked at Emma. "Young lady, you had some information about the first doctor. Can you present it now?" Emma stood, her heart racing. This was the moment she'd waited weeks for. "Your Honor, I discovered Dr. William Carter issued similar reports in at least 3 other cases over the past 2 years. She pulled the testimonies from her folder. Mrs. Dorothy Jenkins, Mr. George Sullivan, and Mrs. Eleanor King. All were diagnosed with dementia, later proven incorrect. The judge examined the documents. "Are these signed statements?" "Yes, Your Honor. And there's one more thing." Emma took a DVD from her folder. "These are images from the security cameras at the town square, showing my Uncle Robert withdrawing money from my grandmother's account without her knowledge." The room fell completely silent. Robert Wilson visibly paled. "Your Honor," protested Michael Peterson, "these allegations are very serious and—" "They're true," interrupted Robert Wilson, standing abruptly. "That's right, I took money from my mother's account." The lawyer tried to silence his client, but Robert kept speaking, visibly shaken. "I was desperate. I lost a lot of money in bad investments. My business was failing. I thought if I could get my mother committed, I could sell the house and solve my problems." Mrs. Margaret Wilson looked at her son with sadness, but no surprise. "Robert, my son, why didn't you talk to me? If you needed help, all you had to do was ask." "Because I knew you'd worry and because—" Robert stopped, struggling for words. "Because I was ashamed to admit I'd failed." Judge Richard Thompson observed the scene carefully. In his years on the bench, he'd witnessed many family dramas, but rarely had he seen such a spontaneous and emotional confession. "Mr. Wilson," the judge said, "are you admitting that you filed this guardianship petition with fraudulent intentions?" Robert Wilson lowered his head. "I am, Your Honor, and I apologize to my mother and my niece." Emma Johnson Williams felt a mix of relief and sadness. She'd succeeded in protecting her grandmother, but seeing her family's pain weighed on her. The judge banged his gavel. Given the favorable medical report and the petitioner's confession, the guardianship request is denied. Mrs. Margaret Wilson retains full legal capacity. He turned to Robert Wilson. "As for the matter of the unauthorized withdrawals, that will be addressed in a separate proceeding." The room erupted in quiet applause. Emma hugged her grandmother, who wept with emotion. "Thank you, my dear," whispered Mrs. Wilson. "You saved Grandma." But the judge wasn't finished. "Emma," he called, "would you come forward?" The girl approached the judge's bench, slightly apprehensive. "I want to commend you for the dedication and intelligence you've shown in this case. Your investigative methods and arguments are worthy of an experienced professional." Thank you, Your Honor. You said you want to be a lawyer when you grow up? Yes, sir. The judge smiled. I'm certain you'll be an excellent lawyer, but remember, justice isn't just about winning cases. It's about protecting those who need protection. You already understand that very well. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. After the hearing, the family gathered outside the courthouse. Robert Wilson hesitantly approached his mother and niece. Mom, Emma, I'm so sorry for all of this. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to make it right. Mrs. Wilson took her son's hand. Robert, you're my son and I love you, but you need to get help to solve your financial problems honestly. I know, Mom. I've already contacted a lawyer to handle the business situation, and I'll repay every dollar I took from your account. Emma looked at her uncle with remarkable maturity for an 11-year-old. Uncle Robert, family is supposed to help each other, not take advantage. If you'd talked to us from the start, maybe we could have found a better solution. Robert Wilson was moved by his niece's words. You're right, Emma. And I want you to know how proud I am of you. You were braver and more honest than I was. In the weeks that followed, the family's life began to settle. Robert Wilson found work as a manager at a construction supply company and started repaying his debts little by little. He also began visiting his mother regularly, not out of obligation but by his own choice. Marilyn found a job right in Riverside to be closer to her mother and daughter. The income was a bit less than in New York, but the peace of mind from being near family made up for it. Mrs. Margaret Wilson continued living in her home, but now with even more company. Emma spent every afternoon with her, and Marilyn had dinner there almost every day. The story of the little lawyer girl spread beyond the borders of Riverside. A regional newspaper ran a feature on the case, and Emma received letters from other children who wanted to study law. Inspired by the response, Mrs. Claire, Emma's teacher, created a school project called Rights and Responsibilities, where children learned about citizenship and basic rights in a simple, educational way. Emma became a mentor for the project, teaching other kids how to research laws and defend their rights. She discovered she had a talent for explaining complicated things in an easy-to-understand way. 6 months after the hearing, the family received an unexpected visit. It was Dr. Thomas Green, the doctor who had examined Mrs. Margaret. I came here to get to know this extraordinary family better, he said with a smile. Your story inspired me to create a more compassionate evaluation project for seniors. The doctor explained he had developed an exam protocol that considered the family environment and the patient's daily activities, not just technical tests. Emma's observation about asking everyday questions changed the way I work, Dr. Thomas said. Now I always include close family members in the evaluation, especially children, who often notice details we adults miss. Mrs. Margaret was moved to hear that her story was helping other seniors. It's good to know our suffering served a greater purpose, she said. A year after the hearing, Emma, now 12, continued her law studies at the public library. Mrs. Meredith, the librarian, had created a special section of legal books for interested young readers. Emma, Mrs. Meredith said one day, have you heard of the Public Defender's Office? I've read about it, but I don't fully understand. They're lawyers who defend people who can't afford private attorneys. I think it would be the perfect career for you. The suggestion made Emma reflect on her future. She wanted to be a lawyer, but hadn't thought about a specific field. That afternoon, she talked to her grandmother about it. Grandma, do you think I should become a public defender when I grow up? Mrs. Margaret, who was watering her plants, paused to think. My dear, you should follow the path your heart tells you. But one thing I know, you were born to help people in need. How do you know? Because you helped me when I needed it most, and I saw how sad you were about your uncle's situation, even though he did wrong. That shows you have a big heart. The conversation with her grandmother confirmed what Emma already felt in her heart. She wanted to use her legal knowledge to help people in difficult situations, especially seniors, who might be going through what her grandmother had. During her second year of high school, Emma started a law study group at school. The group met once a week, to discuss real cases and study laws relevant to everyday life. The project caught the attention of the school administration, which invited a lawyer to give a talk to the students. The chosen lawyer was none other than Mr. Samuel Foster, an experienced public defender. "Young people," Mr. Samuel said, "law isn't just about memorizing rules. It's about understanding that behind every case there's a human story, a family, a dream." After the lecture, Dr. David spoke privately with Emma. "I heard about your story at the courthouse. Very impressive for someone so young." "Thank you, Doctor. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. How can I better prepare to become a public defender?" "Keep studying, but also keep living. The best defenders I know are people who understand life, not just the law." Dr. David's advice stayed etched in Emma's mind. She continued her legal studies, but also dedicated herself to other activities, helping in the community, participating in school social projects, and most importantly, still caring for her grandmother. In her last year of high school, Emma was approached by the courthouse social worker, Ms. Catherine Spencer. "Emma, I have a proposal for you. How about interning at the public defender's office during the summer?" The offer moved Emma deeply. It would be her first real experience in the professional legal world. "Of course I accept. But can I still take care of my grandmother?" "Absolutely. In fact, your experience caring for an elderly person will be very valuable in our work." The internship at the public defender's office was eye-opening for Emma. She saw cases similar to her grandmother's, elderly people being victimized by greedy children, families torn apart by inheritance disputes, ordinary people deceived by close relatives. But she also saw the positive side: families reconciling through dialogue, seniors regaining their dignity, children being protected from dangerous situations. "This work is hard," said Dr. David, who became Emma's mentor. "But it's the most rewarding there is. Every life you help improve makes all the difference." During the internship, Emma had the chance to work on a case very much like her grandmother's. An 80-year-old woman was being pressured by her children to sell her house and split the money among them. "Mrs. Rose," Emma said during a home visit, "do you really want to sell your house?" "No, dear, but my children say it's best for me." "And do you believe that?" The question made Mrs. Rose pause. "Actually, no. I love my home, my garden, my neighbors. I don't want to move to an apartment." With the support of the public defender's office, Mrs. Rose managed to resist her children's pressure and keep her home. The case was resolved without going to court, through family mediation. "You made a difference in this case," Dr. David told Emma. "The way you talk to seniors is special." "I learned from my grandmother," Emma replied. "She taught me that respecting the elderly means listening to what they truly want, not imposing what we think is best for them." By the end of the internship, Emma was absolutely certain she wanted to be a public defender. She took the entrance exam for Columbia Law School and was accepted as the top scorer. "Grandma," she said on results day, "I did it." Mrs. Margaret, now 78, but still sharp and independent, hugged her granddaughter with tears in her eyes. "I always knew you would, my dear. Your grandfather would be so proud." During college, Emma continued living in Riverside and commuting to New York every day. She didn't want to be apart from her grandmother, and the time they spent together remained precious to both. In her third year, Emma was invited to join an outreach project, providing free legal assistance to vulnerable seniors. "This project is perfect for you," said the faculty advisor, Professor Anne Elizabeth. "Your personal experience will be invaluable." The project helped about 50 seniors each month, handling everything from pension issues to family conflicts. Emma stood out for her ability to build trusting relationships with those she assisted. "Do you know why Emma is so good at this work?" Dr. Anne Elizabeth asked the other students. "Because she understands that every senior has a unique story and deserves to be heard with respect and patience." One of the most memorable cases Emma handled was that of Mr. Walter, an 85-year-old man who was being evicted from his home because he couldn't pay his overdue property tax. "Doctor," Mr. Walter said to Emma. He always called her doctor, even after she explained she was still a student. "This house is all I have. My wife planted all these flowers before she passed." Emma investigated the case, and discovered that Mr. Walter was eligible for a property tax exemption as a low-income senior, but had never known how to apply for the benefit. "Mr. Walter, you won't lose your home," Emma said. "We'll solve this together." The regularization process took 6 months, but in the end, Mr. Walter not only kept his home, but also had his property tax debts cancelled. "Doctor," he said to Emma on the day the case was resolved, "how can I thank you?" "By taking good care of the flowers your wife planted," Emma replied with a smile. In her 5th year of law school, Emma wrote her thesis on legal protection for seniors, family and social aspects. The work was based on her personal experience and the cases she had handled during outreach projects. "Your thesis is impressive," said her advisor, Professor Mark Anderson. "You've managed to combine legal theory with practical experience very effectively." The thesis was so well received that Emma was invited to present it at a conference on elder law in Washington, D.C. "Grandma, I'm going to present my work in the Capitol," Emma said excitedly. "I'm so proud of you, my dear," replied Mrs. Margaret. "Will you talk about our story?" "I'll talk about how taking care of you taught me so much about seniors' rights." During her presentation in Washington, D.C., Emma shared her story with an audience of seasoned legal professionals. Many were moved by the account of the 11-year-old girl who had stood up in court to protect her grandmother. Ms. Johnson-Williams, one of the attendees, said after her talk, "Your story shows that the law isn't just about technique, it's also about love and courage." After graduating from law school, Emma took the exam for the New York Public Defender's Office and placed 3rd. Her first assignment as a public defender would be in Riverside. "What a wonderful coincidence," Mrs. Margaret said when she heard the news. "You'll be working in the same courthouse where you defended your grandma." "It's not a coincidence, Grandma. It's destiny." On the day of her swearing in, her whole family was there. Marilyn Robert, who had recovered financially and become a present uncle, Mrs. Margaret, and even Judge Richard Thompson, who had become a family friend over the years. "Emma," Judge Thompson said, "I remember clearly the 11-year-old girl who walked into my courtroom with a worn-out folder full of papers. Today, I see a young lawyer ready to make a difference in so many lives." "Your Honor, everything I learned about justice, I learned that day defending my grandmother." "And what did you learn?" "That justice isn't about winning. It's about protecting those who need protection." As a new public defender, Emma specialized in elder law and family law. Her first official case was strikingly similar to what she had experienced with her grandmother. A 70-year-old woman was being pressured by her son to sign a power of attorney to sell her home. "Mrs. Mary," Emma said during their first meeting, "do you really want to sell your house?" "I don't know, Doctor. My son says it's best for me, but I like living there." "So let's talk about your rights and options." The case was resolved through family mediation, with no need for legal proceedings. Mrs. Mary's son understood that he couldn't force his mother to sell the house and agreed to help her with other financial needs. "Dr. Emma," Mrs. Mary said at the end of the process, "how do you understand the feelings of an elderly person so well? Because I learned from the best teacher, my grandmother." 2 years after starting her work as a public defender, Emma created a project called Intergenerational Family Mediation, focused on resolving conflicts between seniors and their relatives through dialogue. The project was so successful that it caught the attention of other counties and was soon implemented in several towns across New York. "Emma," said Samuel Foster, who remained her mentor, "you're changing the way the justice system handles family matters. This is revolutionary." "I'm just applying what I've learned in practice, that most family conflicts can be resolved when people truly listen to each other." During one of these mediations, Emma encountered a case that deeply moved her. A 12-year-old girl had come to the public defender's office because her grandmother was being pressured by relatives to sell a rural property. "Doctor," said the girl named Isabella, "I read about you online. You also defended your grandmother when you were little, right?" "I did," Emma replied, seeing herself in the girl. "And now, I'll help you defend yours." Isabella's case was resolved in 3 months through family mediation. The grandmother kept her land, and the family found other ways to address their financial struggles. Thank you, Dr. Emma, Isabella said on the day of the resolution. When I grow up, I want to be a public defender too, to help other kids and grandparents. I'm sure you'll be excellent, Emma replied, touched. 5 years into her career as a public defender, Emma was invited to give a lecture at Columbia Law School on elder law and family mediation. "Students," she said to the packed audience, "the law is a powerful tool, but the most powerful tool you have is the ability to listen and understand the stories behind the cases." After the lecture, a student approached Emma. "Professor, how did you develop such sensitivity in dealing with seniors?" "By living with my grandmother from a young age and understanding that age doesn't mean incapacity. It means experience, wisdom, and above all, the right to choose how to live." That evening, Emma had dinner with Mrs. Margaret, as she had every Wednesday for over 15 years. "Grandma, today I gave a lecture at the university and talked about you." "About me?" asked Mrs. Margaret, now 82 but still sharp and active. "About how you taught me that defending someone is more than knowing laws. It's understanding their heart." "Oh, my dear, you learned that on your own. I just set the example." "You gave me so much more than an example, Grandma. You showed me it's worth fighting for those we love." After dinner, as Emma helped her grandmother organize her weekly medications, a routine they'd kept since she was a child, Mrs. Margaret asked an unexpected question. "Emma, do you have any regrets in life?" The question caught the young defender off guard. "Regrets? Why do you ask, Grandma?" "Because you've spent so much time caring for me that maybe you've missed other opportunities. Relationships, travel, parties." Emma smiled and held her grandmother's hand. "Grandma, everything I am today is because of you. My career, my values, how I see the world. How could I regret the most important thing in my life? But don't you think about getting married, having children?" "I do think about it, but at the right time, and when that happens, I want my children to have the same opportunity I had, to spend time with their great-grandmother and learn from her wisdom." The conversation deeply moved Mrs. Margaret Wilson. She had spent years worrying that she might be a burden to her granddaughter, but now she understood that her presence had been a gift. 6 months after this conversation, Emma Johnson Williams met Richard, a pediatrician who worked at the public hospital. They met during a case where Emma was defending a child in a custody process. "Dr. Emma," Richard said after a hearing, "may I invite you for coffee? I'd like to talk more about the collaboration between health and justice." The professional invitation turned into personal interest. Richard was impressed by Emma's dedication to social causes, and she admired his tenderness with the children he treated at the hospital. After 3 months of dating, Emma took Richard to meet Mrs. Margaret. "Grandma, this is Richard, the one I told you about." "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Margaret," Richard said, respectfully kissing her hand. "Emma talks about you every day." "I hope only good things," Mrs. Margaret replied, smiling. "Only wonderful things. She told me how you inspired her to become a public defender." During dinner, Mrs. Margaret observed the interaction between Richard and Emma. She noticed how the young man respected and admired her granddaughter's devotion to family. "Richard," Mrs. Margaret said at the end of the evening, "may I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, Mrs. Margaret." "Do you understand that Emma and I are very close?" "I do, and I admire that. In fact, it's one of the things that draws me to her most. Someone who cares so deeply for family will care deeply for any relationship." The answer pleased Mrs. Margaret immensely. A year later, Richard proposed to Emma during a dinner at Mrs. Margaret's house. "Emma," he said, kneeling in the living room where so many important conversations had taken place, "I want to be part of this family forever. Will you marry me?" Emma looked at her grandmother, whose eyes were filled with tears of emotion. "Yes, I will," she replied, embracing her fiancé and then her grandmother. The wedding was simple but moving. Mrs. Margaret was Emma's matron of honor, and Robert Wilson, now fully rehabilitated, walked his niece down the aisle. During the ceremony, Emma made sure to mention her grandmother in her vows. "Richard, I promise to be the devoted partner my grandmother taught me to be. I promise to care for our family with the same love she taught me to have." 2 years after the wedding, Emma discovered she was pregnant. The news filled the entire family with joy, especially Mrs. Margaret. "Grandma, you're going to be a great-grandmother," Emma announced. "What joy, my dear. I just hope I stay healthy enough to meet my great-grandchild." "You will, Grandma, and he'll be lucky to learn from you, just like I did." During her pregnancy, Emma continued working but slowed her pace. She wanted to make sure she had time to care for her baby and still look after her grandmother. "Dr. Emma," Dr. Samuel Foster said, "are you sure you want to return to work so soon after giving birth?" "I'm sure, but I'll work part-time for a few years. My priority now is being a mother and still being a granddaughter." The baby was born on a spring afternoon. He was a boy named Thomas, after the great-grandfather he would never meet. When Mrs. Margaret held her great-grandson for the first time, Emma felt the circle had closed. The child who had fought to protect her grandmother now had a son who would know that same grandmother. "Grandma," Emma said, watching the scene, "Thomas will have the same luck I did, growing up listening to your stories and learning from your wisdom." "And I'll be lucky enough to watch him grow up," replied Mrs. Margaret Wilson, cradling her great-grandson. Years passed. Thomas grew up running around his great-grandmother's house, listening to the same stories Emma had heard as a child. Mrs. Wilson, now 88, remained sharp and engaged. Emma had become a nationally recognized expert in elder law and family mediation. She wrote 3 books on the subject and taught courses at universities across the country. But what made her proudest wasn't her professional achievements. It was seeing her son playing in the garden Mrs. Wilson had tended for decades, listening to his great-grandmother's stories and learning about family love. "Mom," Thomas said one day at 6 years old, "why do you always say Grandma taught you everything?" "Because it's true, my son. Your great-grandmother taught me that family means taking care of each other, especially the most vulnerable. And when I grow up, will I take care of Grandma too?" "Of course you will. And when you have children, they'll get to know their great-great-grandmother and learn from her too." The conversation moved Emma deeply. She realized she had created a legacy that spanned generations, love and respect for the elderly. One Sunday afternoon, as she watched 4 generations gathered in Mrs. Wilson's living room, herself, her mother Marilyn, her son Thomas and her grandmother, Emma reflected on how far they'd come. It had all started with an 11-year-old girl determined to protect her grandmother. Now, 25 years later, she had become a respected advocate, a devoted mother, and above all, a granddaughter who had kept her promise. "Grandma," Emma said that afternoon, "thank you for teaching me that age is wisdom, not weakness." "Thank you for defending me when I needed it most," Mrs. Wilson replied, "and for never stopping all these years." "I'll defend you forever, grandmother." "I know you will, my dear, and now you're teaching Thomas the same." The cycle continues. As the sun set behind the backyard trees, Emma smiled. She had learned early in life that defending those we love isn't just an act of courage, it's an act of love that multiplies across generations. The girl who once said, "I'm my grandmother's lawyer," had become a woman who dedicated her life to defending entire families, always remembering that behind every legal case lies a story of love, struggle, and hope. The end. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story. Leave a comment saying if you'd do the same as Emma to protect your family. And if you have a special grandmother like Mrs. Wilson, share this story with her. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartwarming stories.